came to see me at a time when my world had already shrunk to white walls and pills on a strict schedule. My twin brother, my mirror, the stronger one, the one who was never supposed to break, stood in front of me bruised, quiet, and hollowed out by something far worse than pain. He didn't say much. Shame and fear had taught him how to stay silent. But the truth has a way of crawling into the light, no matter how deep it's buried. Before we go on, tell us in the comments where you're listening from. My identical twin brother, Ethan, came to see me at the psychiatric hospital. His body was bruised, his face battered, and whatever strength he once had was gone. When I understood that my niece Charlotte's husband wasn't just abusing her, but was also beating my own brother, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I made a decision that would change everything. I would take Ethan's place and make Damian Cross and his family pay in a way they would never forget. My name is Evan. This is the story of how I became my brother's shield. Ethan and I are identical twins, so alike we could be mistaken for reflections. But our lives unfolded in opposite directions, like thunder and still water, like a predator and its prey. People always said there was something wrong with me. Doctors labeled it impulse control disorder. I call it feeling everything too deeply, joy that feels like my heart might burst, emotions magnified beyond control. But it was my anger that landed me here. The second Ethan walked through that door, I knew. His left eye was swollen shut, dark with bruises. His knuckles were split and raw. He leaned away, protecting his right side. Broken ribs. "Jesus, Ethan, what did they do to you?" I asked. He tried to smile. "You should see the other guy," he said, forcing a joke, but his voice trembled. I'd been locked up in Portland State Hospital for 10 years. When I was 17, I put 3 guys in the hospital for cornering Ethan. The judge called me a danger to society. Maybe he was right. "It's Charlotte's husband," Ethan said, slumping into the chair. "Damon Cross. He hits Charlotte every day. Now he started on little Avery too. She's only 3. The chair creaked under my grip. Sweet Avery, a baby I'd only seen in pictures. When I tried to stop him yesterday, he and his family jumped me. His mother, Beverly, his sister, Brenda, they held me down while he used his belt. That familiar fire burned in my chest, but this time it wasn't wild. This time it was focused. I walked to the barred window. 10 years doing push-ups on these bars, reading every book, learning to harness the storm inside me. The doctors thought they were rehabilitating me. They were forging me into something deadlier. "Ethan, look at me. Really look." He raised his head, like looking in a mirror. Same face, same scars, same cowlick. The only difference, I'd gotten stronger while he'd gotten beaten down. We're identical. Nobody could tell us apart. Understanding dawned in his good eye. "Evan, no, you can't. Those people are animals." I smiled coldly. "Brother, I've been living with animals for 10 years. The difference is these ones are locked up and those ones are running free." I grabbed his shoulders. "You'll stay here where it's safe. I'm going out there to handle Damian Cross. I'm going to protect Charlotte and Avery the way I should have been doing all along." For the first time, Ethan's face showed hope. Within an hour, we had switched clothes, IDs, and lives. 20 minutes later, I walked through those hospital doors as Ethan Miller, wearing his threadbare clothes that smelled of fear and defeat. The security guard barely glanced at the discharge papers. The bus ride to East Portland took 45 minutes through neighborhoods that got progressively worse. Cracked sidewalks, boarded windows, dead grass. This was where my brother lived, where my niece was growing up. Number 1247 was a faded blue house with peeling paint and a dirty yard. The mailbox hung crooked. I could smell something rotten from the street. The key turned with a grinding sound. The smell hit me first. Unwashed dishes, stale cigarettes, something sour. The living room was chaos, clothes thrown everywhere, empty beer bottles, a blaring television. From the kitchen came quiet sounds, someone trying not to make noise. Then I saw her. Avery sat in the corner behind a laundry basket, almost invisible. She wore a stained pink dress, too big for her tiny frame. Her dark hair hung in tangles around a face that should have been bright with mischief. Instead, her eyes held the weariness of someone much older. She looked up and pressed herself further into the corner. "Grandpa," she whispered. My heart shattered. This little girl was afraid of her own grandfather. "Hey there, sweetheart," I said softly, crouching down. "Daddy," a nervous voice called from the kitchen. "Is that you?" Charlotte appeared in the doorway. I barely recognized my niece. The vibrant woman I remembered was now a ghost. Painfully thin, dark circles under her eyes, wearing long sleeves despite the summer heat. She held a dish towel like a shield. "Oh," she said with relief, "it's just you, Dad." But even that relief was tinged with fear. She moved like someone expecting to be hit, shoulders hunched, steps careful. When she bent to pick up a toy, she winced and favored her left side. "How was your appointment?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. The house told their story. Broken toys in corners, scuff marks on walls. No pictures, no decorations, just survival. Charlotte went back to the kitchen, moving like a mouse. Avery remained in her corner with a headless doll, both existing in constant fear, waiting for the next blow. I was processing this nightmare when heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Well, 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 look what the cat dragged back in. Beverly Cross stood in the hallway like a vulture in a floral housecoat, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She was heavy with small, mean eyes that swept over the room with disgust. "There you are, you worthless piece of trash," she snarled. "Where the hell have you been all day? Sitting around some doctor's office while my son works his ass off to keep a roof over your head." Charlotte shrank back, and Avery curled up smaller in her corner. They'd heard this before. "Look at this dump." Beverly kicked an empty beer bottle. "No wonder my Damien comes home stressed." Brenda Cross emerged from a bedroom looking like a younger, meaner version of her mother. Behind her trailed a chubby 5-year-old with chocolate around his mouth and an entitled swagger. "Uncle Ethan's back," Brenda announced mockingly. "How nice." The boy Caleb immediately zeroed in on Avery. He marched over and snatched her headless doll. "This is stupid," he declared. "Why do you play with broken toys?" "You're stupid too. Give it back," Avery whispered. "No finders keepers." He threw it against the wall, then shoved Avery hard enough to knock her over. Charlotte rushed from the kitchen. "Caleb, don't!" She dropped beside Avery, pulling her daughter into her arms. "Baby, are you okay? Get your hands off him," Beverly barked. "Don't you dare cuddle that brat." "She's my daughter," Charlotte said quietly, holding Avery protectively. Brenda stepped forward and grabbed Charlotte's arm, yanking her away. "Your daughter needs to learn to share." He heard her. "Shut up." Brenda shoved Charlotte backward. "You don't tell me how to raise my son." Caleb, emboldened, drew back his foot to kick the crying Avery. That's when something inside me snapped. I was across the room before anyone could blink. My hand closed around Caleb's ankle mid-kick. "No," I said quietly. The boy tried to pull away, but my grip was iron. His eyes went wide with shock. "Let go," he shrieked. "Grandma, Mom." I held firm. "You don't touch her. You don't take her toys. You don't push her. Understand?" Beverly charged over. "Let go of my grandson. How dare you?" I released Caleb and stood to my full height. Beverly had to crane her neck up, and something in my eyes made her step backward. "Your grandson needs manners." "Don't tell me how to raise my family," she blustered, but her voice had lost its venom. "You're nothing but a freeloader." I took a step forward. She took two back. Things are going to change around here, starting now. Brenda grabbed Caleb's hand. Come on, baby, let's go to Grandma's room. But I want to play. Not today, Brenda said quickly, never taking her eyes off me. The three of them retreated down the hallway, whispering frantically. A door slammed and locked. Charlotte was still on the floor, holding Avery, staring up at me with wide eyes. Dad, what's gotten into you? You've never stood up to them before. I knelt beside them both. Maybe it's time I started. The house fell into an uneasy silence for the rest of the evening, but I knew this was just the calm before the storm. The rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the midnight silence like a chainsaw through glass. I've been lying awake in the cramped living room, using a moth-eaten couch as my bed, listening to Charlotte and Avery's quiet breathing from the back bedroom. The sound I'd been dreading had finally arrived. Damon Cross was home. The engine sputtered and died with a violent cough, followed by the crash of something metal hitting the ground. Probably the bike falling over. Heavy, unsteady footsteps stumbled up the front walk, accompanied by a string of slurred curses that would make a sailor blush. Goddamn piece of shit bike. Lost again. Fuck cards were rigged. I sat up slowly, every muscle in my body coiled like a spring. This was it. This was the monster who'd been terrorizing my family for years. And he was about to walk through that door, drunk, angry, and looking for someone to hurt. The front door exploded inward with a bang that shook the whole house. Damon Cross filled the doorway like a nightmare made flesh. 6 feet of muscle gone to fat, wearing a grease-stained work shirt and jeans that reek of beer and cigarettes. His face was flushed red from alcohol, and his small, piggy eyes swept the room with the mean intelligence of a predator. Shh, Charlotte, he bellowed loud enough to wake the dead. Where the hell are you? Get me some water, now. From the back bedroom came the sound of frantic whispering and a child's frightened whimper. Avery had woken up and she was scared. I said, now. Damon kicked over a chair, sending it crashing into the wall. And what's this old bastard doing sleeping on my couch? He focused on me with the kind of look a man gives something he's about to step on. In his drunken state, he probably thought I'd cower like I always had before. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Get up, old man. He snarled, weaving slightly on his feet. You want to live in my house, you follow my rules. First rule, when I come home, you disappear. I stood up slowly, deliberately. At full height, I was only an inch shorter than him. But 10 years of prison conditioning had carved me into something harder than he'd ever be. Your house, I said quietly. This is Charlotte's house. She pays the rent. Damien's face twisted with rage. Did you just talk back to me? He took a stumbling step forward, raising his hand. I'll teach you some respect, you worthless piece of shit. The slap he threw was wild, telegraphed the kind of sloppy swing that works on frightened women and children. I caught his wrist mid-swing, like catching a slow-pitch softball. What the? Damon's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to pull his hand back, but it might as well have been caught in a steel trap. I squeezed, not hard enough to break anything yet, just enough to get his attention. We need to talk about the new rules around here. Let go of me. He tried to throw a punch with his free hand, but I caught that wrist too. Now I had him completely helpless, both arms trapped, swaying on his feet like a scarecrow in a windstorm. Rule number 1, I said, applying pressure to his right wrist. You don't hit Charlotte anymore. Crack. The sound of his wrist breaking was sharp and clean, like snapping a dry branch. Damon's scream could have shattered windows. Rule number 2, I continued as if nothing had happened. You don't touch Avery, ever. Before he could scream again, I drove my fist into his solar plexus with surgical precision. All the air left his lungs in a whoosh, and his eyes rolled back in his head. I released his wrists and he crumpled to the floor like a sack of wet concrete. From down the hallway came the sound of doors slamming in frantic whispers, but Beverly and Brenda were too scared to come investigate. Early the next morning, two police officers stood on the front porch, their patrol cars' red and blue lights casting shadows across the neighborhood. The older sergeant held a notebook while his younger partner kept his hand near his weapon. "Are you Ethan Miller?" the sergeant asked. "Yes, sir, I'm Officer Hayes. This is Detective Campbell. We received a complaint about an assault. May we come in?" I stepped aside. Charlotte emerged from the bedroom, clutching her robe with Avery peeking out behind her legs. Damon sat slumped in a kitchen chair, his right wrist wrapped in a makeshift splint. His face was pale and sweaty. "There he is," Damon pointed with his good hand. "That crazy old bastard attacked me, broke my wrist for no reason. I want him arrested." Officer Hayes looked between us. "Sir, can you tell us your version?" "I came home from work and he just went crazy. Damian Wed started grabbing me, twisting my arm. I think he's having a mental breakdown." Detective Campbell examined Damon's wrist. "This is a serious injury, Mr. Miller. What's your side?" I reached into the kitchen drawer where Charlotte kept important papers. My brother had documented everything. "Officers, before we go further, you should see these." I spread medical reports across the table, photos of bruises, x-rays of broken ribs, doctor's notes describing injuries consistent with domestic violence, all dated over 2 years, all with Charlotte's name. "These are my daughter's medical records," I said quietly. "Every time he's beaten her." Officer Hayes picked up a photo. Charlotte's face so swollen her eyes were nearly shut. Jesus Christ. "And these are my medical records from yesterday." More photos of violence. "He did this when I tried to stop him from hitting my granddaughter." Detective Campbell studied the dates. "Mr. Cross, these records show a pattern going back years. You're telling us this elderly man randomly attacked you?" Damon's face went red. "Those are..." "She fell downstairs. She's clumsy." Multiple times, Hayes raised an eyebrow. "She broke her own ribs falling downstairs." "Look at my wrist," Damien protested. "After you tried to hit him," I said calmly, "in front of witnesses in his own home where you've been abusing his daughter for years." Charlotte stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Officers, it's true. Everything in those files. He hits me almost every day. Yesterday he hit my father when he tried to protect Avery." The officers exchanged a look. "Mr. Cross," Hayes said coldly, "we could arrest you right now based on this evidence. The only reason we're not is because your victims haven't pressed charges yet. But my wrist got broken when you assaulted an elderly man in his own home." Campbell interrupted. "You're lucky he didn't do worse. This is your only warning. If we get called back, you're going to jail." They left Damon holding his broken wrist, staring at the medical records that destroyed his victim's story. After the patrol car disappeared, the house fell silent, except for whispered conversations from Beverly and Brenda's room. That evening, I could hear Beverly and Brenda whispering frantically in the kitchen, plotting their next move. By dinner time, the Cross family had apparently decided on their strategy. Beverly emerged from her room with an almost cheerful demeanor, while Brenda actually managed what might have been a smile. Even Damon, despite his broken wrist, seemed more confident than he'd been since the police visit. "Ethan," Beverly called out in a honey-sweet voice that made my skin crawl. "Why don't you join us for dinner tonight? I made your favorite chicken soup." Charlotte looked up from where she was feeding Avery, surprise flickering across her face. In all the years she'd lived here, Beverly had never once invited her father to eat with the family. "That's very kind of you," I replied carefully, taking a seat at the kitchen table. The bowl of soup Beverly placed in front of me smelled delicious, but something about her eager expression set off every alarm bell in my head. "Go on, try it," she urged, practically bouncing on her feet. I put extra seasoning in it just for you. I lifted the spoon to my lips, pretending to take a sip, then suddenly jerked my elbow as if startled by a sound. The bowl went flying, soup splashing across the floor in a steaming puddle. "Oh no!" I exclaimed, jumping up. "I'm so sorry, Beverly. How clumsy of me." Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Disappointment, anger, then forced understanding. "Oh, it's fine. These things happen." But I caught the look that passed between her and Brenda. They'd been counting on that soup working. "I'll just make myself a sandwich," I said, cleaning up the mess. "Don't trouble yourself making another batch." The rest of the evening passed in tense silence. Around 10, I announced I was tired and settled down on the living room couch, pulling a thin blanket over myself. Within minutes, I was breathing deeply and evenly, every appearance of a man fast asleep. But I wasn't sleeping. Every sense was heightened, waiting. Around midnight, I heard the soft creak of floorboards. Someone was moving through the house trying to be quiet. The footsteps paused outside the living room, then came closer. Through barely opened eyelids, I saw Damien's silhouette against the dim light from the hallway. Despite his injured wrist, he carried a coil of rope in his good hand. His face was set in grim determination as he approached the couch. He moved slowly, carefully, trying not to wake his intended victim. When he was close enough, he reached out to grab my shoulder. That's when I struck. My hands shot out and clamped around his throat before he could make a sound. His eyes went wide with shock and terror. As I sat up, my grip cutting off his air supply. "Going somewhere," I whispered. He tried to struggle, but 10 years of prison conditioning had given me strength. He couldn't match, especially with one useless arm. Within seconds, he was unconscious. It took me less than 5 minutes to drag him into the bedroom and secure him to the bed frame with his own rope. I gagged him with a pillowcase to keep him quiet, then stepped back to admire my work. Now came the tricky part. I slipped out the bedroom's back door that led to the small yard, then crept around to the side of the house where Beverly and Brenda's room was located. Taking a deep breath, I began pounding on the wall and shouting at the top of my lungs, "Help, Beverly! Brenda! He's beating me! Help me, please!" I threw in some convincing groans, and the sound of furniture being knocked over really selling the performance. "He's gone crazy! He's going to kill me! Help!" Within seconds, I heard footsteps rushing toward the bedroom. Beverly burst through the bedroom door first, clutching a wooden rolling pin like a weapon, her face twisted with savage glee. Right behind her came Brenda, wielding a metal mop handle with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting years for this moment. "Where is he?" Beverly hissed, squinting into the dark room. "Where's that old bastard?" The bedroom was pitch black, except for a thin sliver of light from the hallway. On the bed, they could make out the silhouette of a figure tied down, and struggling muffled sounds coming from behind what appeared to be a gag. "There," Brenda pointed with her makeshift weapon. "He's trying to get loose." What they couldn't see in the darkness was me crouched in the corner with my phone's camera recording everything. What they also couldn't see was that the person tied to the bed wasn't me at all. "This is for breaking Damon's wrist." Beverly raised the rolling pin above her head and brought it down hard across the figure's ribs. The muffled scream that followed should have given them pause, but they were too caught up in their bloodlust to notice it sounded wrong. "And this is for embarrassing our family." Brenda swung the mop handle like a baseball bat, connecting with what she thought was my shoulder, but was actually Damien's already injured arm. More muffled screaming, more desperate struggling against the ropes. "Hit him harder," Beverly panted, bringing the rolling pin down again and again. "Make him pay for thinking he could stand up to us." Brenda was in a frenzy now, raining blows on the helpless figure. "You think you're so tough now, old man? Not so tough when you can't fight back." The beating went on for what felt like hours. but was probably only 2 or 3 minutes. Both women were breathing hard, sweat pouring down their faces as they took turns hitting their victim with everything they had. Finally, Beverly stepped back, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "I think he's learned his lesson. Should we untie him?" Brenda asked, still gripping her weapon. "Not yet. Let him think about what happens when he crosses the Cross family." That's when I stood up and flipped on the light switch. The sudden brightness made both women squint and shield their eyes. When their vision cleared, they found themselves staring at a scene that would haunt their nightmares forever. Damien lay tied to the bed, his face a mask of blood and bruises. His broken wrist bent at an impossible angle. His eyes were wide with pain and terror above the gag, and his chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. Beverly's rolling pin clattered to the floor. Brenda's mouth fell open in a perfect O of horror. "Surprise," I said calmly, holding up my phone with the camera still recording. "Say hello to the evidence." "Oh my God," Beverly whispered, staring at her unconscious son. "Oh my God, what have we done?" "What you've done," I corrected, "is commit aggravated assault with weapons on camera with clear audio of you admitting it was revenge." Brenda was shaking so hard she could barely stand. We thought, you said," I said, "Damon was beating me. You assumed I was the one tied up. That assumption just cost you both about 10 years in prison." Beverly fell to her knees beside the bed, reaching for Damien with trembling hands. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean—" "Don't touch him," I snapped. "You've done enough damage." I held up the phone again, making sure they could see the red recording light. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm calling 911. You're both going to jail, and this video is going to make sure you stay there for a very long time." Both women were crying now, the reality of what they'd done finally sinking in. Within minutes, I was on the phone with 911, reporting a serious assault. The wail of sirens cut through the night air like a symphony of justice. Red and blue lights painted the narrow alley in strobing colors as 2 patrol cars and an ambulance squeezed into the cramped space in front of the house. Officer Hayes was the first through the door, his hand resting on his weapon until he saw me standing calmly in the living room. Detective Campbell followed close behind, along with 2 paramedics wheeling a stretcher. "Mr. Miller, what's the situation?" "The situation," I said, holding up my phone, "is that I have video evidence of aggravated assault with deadly weapons." I led them to the bedroom where Beverly and Brenda sat huddled in the corner, still in shock from what they'd done. Damien lay unconscious on the bed, his breathing shallow and labored. "Jesus Christ," one of the paramedics muttered immediately, going to work, checking Damon's vital signs. "This guy's in bad shape. Multiple contusions, possible internal bleeding, and this wrist is completely shattered." Detective Campbell looked at the blood-stained rolling pin and mop handle on the floor, then at the 2 women. "Ladies, you're under arrest for aggravated assault." "But we thought," Beverly started to protest. "Ma'am, I don't care what you thought. You beat a man with weapons while he was tied to a bed. That's attempted murder in my book." Officer Hayes was already reading them their rights while fitting handcuffs around their wrists. Brenda was sobbing uncontrollably while Beverly kept staring at her unconscious son with horror. "The video shows everything," I told Detective Campbell, handing him my phone. "They came in with weapons, admitted it was revenge, and beat him for several minutes while he was helpless." Campbell watched the footage, his expression growing darker with each passing second. "This is some of the clearest evidence of assault I've ever seen. These women are going away for a long time." The paramedics loaded Damien onto the stretcher, working frantically to stabilize him. "We need to get him to Portland General immediately. He's got at least 3 broken ribs, and I'm worried about internal bleeding." As they wheeled him out, Beverly called out desperately, "Damien, baby, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you." Save it for the judge, Officer Hayes said, guiding her toward the patrol car. Within an hour, the house was empty except for me, Charlotte Avery, and one very confused 5-year-old boy. Caleb stood in the middle of the living room, looking around at the bloodstains and overturned furniture, trying to process what had happened to his world. His grandmother and mother were gone. His uncle was in the hospital, and the old man he'd been bullying was suddenly in charge. "Where's my mom?" he asked in a small voice. "Your mom and grandma did something very bad?" I explained, crouching down to his level. "They hurt someone, so the police had to take them away." His lower lips started to tremble. For all his bratty behavior, he was still just a scared little kid whose world had just collapsed. "Am I in trouble too?" he whispered. "That depends," I said seriously. "Do you remember how you treated Avery?" He nodded, looking ashamed. "And do you remember what I told you about how knights are supposed to behave?" Another nod. "Well, Caleb, here's the thing. Your mom and grandma are going to be gone for a while. That means you're going to be staying with us. And in this house, we have rules." I stood up and walked over to where Avery was peeking out from behind Charlotte's legs. "Avery," I said formally, "I hereby name you queen of this house and Caleb." I turned back to the boy. "You are now Sir Caleb, sworn to protect Queen Avery and make sure she's happy and safe." Caleb's eyes widened. Despite everything, the idea of being a knight clearly appealed to him. "What does a knight do?" he asked. "A knight shares his toys with the queen. A knight never pushes or hits the queen. A knight makes sure the queen gets the best food and the most comfortable chair. Can you do that, Sir Caleb?" He looked over at Avery, who was watching him with cautious hope in her eyes. "Yes," he said quietly, "I can do that." 7 days after the assault, Damon limped through the front door with his arm in a sling and his ribs wrapped in bandages. Behind him shuffled Beverly and Brenda, both looking like they'd aged 10 years during their week in county jail. Their orange jumpsuits had been replaced with wrinkled clothes, but the defeated look in their eyes remained. "Well, well," I said from my seat at the kitchen table, where I'd been helping Avery with a coloring book. "The gang's all here." Damien could barely look at me. His mother had beaten him so severely that he needed surgery to repair internal bleeding. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. "We're back," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "The charges were dropped when I refused to testify." "How generous of you," I replied, "but we need to talk about the new arrangement." I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, where I prepared a folder full of documents. "Since you're all back, it's time to settle accounts." Beverly's eyes narrowed. "What kind of accounts?" "Well, let's see." I opened the folder. 7 years of Charlotte paying rent on this house while you freeloaded. 7 years of medical bills from your son's abuse. 7 years of trauma therapy that my granddaughter is going to need. Pain and suffering, emotional distress. I slid a piece of paper across the table. $400,000. That's what you owe this family. Damien's jaw dropped. $400,000? Are you insane? We don't have that kind of money. Then you'll get it. Liquidate your assets. Get loans. Sell whatever you own. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to pay. Brenda laughed bitterly. "And if we don't?" I held up my phone, showing the video that had already been copied to multiple cloud accounts. "Then this goes viral on every social media platform. Your faces, your names, your voices admitting to assault. Good luck finding jobs or housing after that." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Avery's crayons on paper. "There's one more thing," I continued. "Charlotte is divorcing you, Damon. Today the papers are already filed." Charlotte appeared from the bedroom dressed in clean clothes and carrying a small suitcase. For the first time in years, she stood up straight, her shoulders back, her head held high. "I'm taking Avery and moving in with my father," she announced. "The real one?" What do you mean the real one? Beverly asked suspiciously. That's when the front door opened one more time and Ethan walked in. My twin brother looked healthier than he had in years. His face filled out, his eyes bright and clear. "Hello, everyone," he said with a smile. "The doctors say I've made a remarkable recovery. Amazing. What a week of peace and quiet can do for a man's mental health." The Cross family stared at him, then at me, then back at him, trying to process what they were seeing. "You see," I explained, "while you were busy destroying each other, my brother was getting the help he needed, and I was getting the justice my family deserved." Ethan walked over and put his arm around Charlotte. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." As we prepared to leave, I turned back to the three broken people sitting at that kitchen table. "You know, for 7 years you made my family's life hell because you thought you could, because you thought we were weak, because you thought nobody would stand up to you." I picked up Avery, who wrapped her arms around my neck, trustingly. "But here's what you never understood about family. When you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us. And when you threaten our children, you wake up something in us that you really don't want to meet." I looked each of them in the eye. Sometimes the people you think are weak are just waiting for the right moment to show you how strong they really are. We walked out of that house and never looked back. Charlotte got her divorce, we got our money, and Avery got the childhood she deserved. But most importantly, we got each other back. Because at the end of the day, family isn't just about blood. It's about who's willing to fight for you when the world gets dark. It's about who will swap places with you when you can't fight anymore. It's about love that's stronger than fear and courage that's deeper than anger. Looking back at this true story, I realize I became someone I never thought I'd be. 10 years in that hospital didn't break me. It forged me into a weapon. But here's the thing. Don't become like me. Don't let anger rot inside you until violence feels like the only way you can speak. I spent 10 long years trying to cage my rage, and only later did I understand I shouldn't have buried it. I should have learned how to guide it. God didn't give us strength just to strike back. He gave it to shield the ones we love. The lesson isn't that you must break bones to defend your family. It's that you must rise and speak before it ever reaches that point. We tell ourselves these old man stories. I'm too old, too weak, too tired to matter. They're comforting lies. Age doesn't strip you of power. It sharpens it into wisdom. Experience doesn't make you fragile. It makes you dangerous to anyone who preys on the innocent. My warning is simple. Don't wait until your family is already shattered before you act. Never let bullies convince you that keeping the peace means swallowing abuse. And never confuse kindness with weakness. This true story taught me that love doesn't always look soft. Sometimes love is fury. Sometimes protecting your family means becoming the storm they fear. But God help me. I wish with everything I have that I'd found another way. Because the real lesson in these so-called grandpa stories isn't revenge. It's awareness. Notice the signs early. Speak up sooner. Ask for help before the pressure explodes. Once you cross the line I crossed, there's no returning to the person you used to be. Every family has an Ethan, someone gentle, someone vulnerable, someone who needs protection. And every family needs someone willing to stand in front and take the hit. Just try to be a wiser shield than I was. This story changed all of our lives. I pray yours ends with less pain. If this made you think about the protectors in your own family, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, when was a time someone stood up for you? And maybe you see me now and think I'm just a crazy, violent old man. Maybe that's easier. Maybe labeling me that way lets you keep a safe distance from the story. I won't argue with you. I've been called worse. Doctors had their words for it. Society had its own. But before you turn away, ask yourself this. What would you have done if the person you love most walked in broken, bruised, and silent? What name would they give you then? I don't tell this story to be praised or forgiven. I tell it as a warning. Because once you're forced to become the shield, the world is quick to forget why you had to stand there in the first place. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value every story and every voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Uncle Bernard and share this video with your friends.